As as Chris and Teresa said, I've worked with NUCA a number of times over the years, and this is to show you how much I've worked with NUCA. I came in this morning and I was getting my water, as you'll see me do many times during the program. I turned and I looked at this thing and I realized that I've worked with NUCA a lot over the years because it sits in front of me and I didn't even notice it. I'm so used to that. And as Teresa said, I did talk to a couple of the execs, 3 or 4 of the execs before this program, all of whom had worked with me before in my programs. And I thought it was interesting that when I talked to Janet, Janet said, and I asked her how much time she wanted to use as far as interaction and things like that. And she said, "Oh, Mark, I want you to just really share everything. I could listen to you talk for the entire program." And just before we clicked off, Teresa stayed on for a minute and she looked at me and she says, "You're not going to talk for the whole program, are you?" So we are friendly enough that Teresa can say, "No, you don't do that." So we're going to try to get everybody working together. We're going to use the chat today. If you have any questions or comments, I know we've got a decent sized group. So in order that we don't have a lot of people jumping in and out, if you've got a question, either raise your hand or do something visual so that Chris or the other staff people from NUCA can see, and they'll get my attention. If you need to unmute, go ahead and do that. There's no real wrong time to jump in, but we are going to be using a little bit of PowerPoint. I promise you not much, but just enough to give you some information. Chris has kind of controlled everything. So I'm going to share my, if I can get my mouse to work here. I'm going to share my screen with you for just a second here at the beginning. Let's see if we can. Are we okay now? Everybody got the screen? Okay, well, that's just a cover set. For those of you that I haven't worked with, I just wanted to share a little bit of my background with you. And obviously, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I've been in the association business for quite a while. Those are some of the jobs that I've had in the association business. It looks like after I put this up here, I realized it looks like I can't hold a job because I've had so many. But in effect, I worked for an association management company where a couple of those were at the same time. The one on here, the Chain Link Fence Manufacturers Institute, that is the job I currently have. Also had that for a number of years. I've also worked in membership, and of course, membership was my responsibility in all those areas. I've also worked in membership as a volunteer. I was a member of the National PTA's membership committee. I was president of the Local Speakers Association. So membership is pretty much what I've done for a long time. And then I've written I've written 5 books on membership and leadership for the association community. So this is pretty much what I do. So you'll hear a lot of my expertise, as it were, or certainly my experiences, but also some of the things I've picked up from the other clients I've worked with. So as far as today's program, I tried to summarize Teresa's remarks as quickly as I could by saying, let's not waste time today. So here's what we're going to do. We want to identify your concerns without spending all day just going around and saying, what do you want to talk about? So we're trying to give you a chance to give some input there. We want to share information with you, but also some perspectives, and we'll kind of start with the perspectives. And then as we go through, we'll share some information from again, my experience, and we'll get people involved. We are going to put you to work. We're going to ask you to actually have some input to the process, giving us some of your ideas and maybe some of the things that have worked for you. We are going to get you together. We'll use the not only the chat, but we'll use the group function. We'll have you in breakouts a couple of times. We want this to be a two-pronged, because we're going to be working together several times over the next year. We want today to be a kickoff where we're doing 2 things. First of all, we want to give you takeaway information today, things you can use from this hour we're going to spend together, and take that back to your chapters and get some useful ideas out of this also. But the other thing we want to do is get input for the San Antonio meeting. So we may skip over some things today, and you may want to say, Mark, we need some more time on that in San Antonio. Or you might want to say, hey, Mark, we don't need to cover that in San Antonio with the group. We'll have some members there, and maybe we want to talk about something else. So that's what we want to try to do today. and we'll get started and go through the program. We are going to leave time at the end of it for you all to ask any questions that you want. If and Chris, I don't know that we were going to do this, but I think everybody has my contact information because I sent out an email kind of introducing myself to everybody. But if not, anything that we don't cover today, any questions you have that we don't cover in the time we've got, feel free to contact me afterwards or in between, or for something that you want to spend some more time on for your chapter. That's what we're doing this year, is trying to make whatever I'm worth available to you throughout the year. So let's just real quickly take a look at the kind of the perspectives part of it. One of the things that we find is that sometimes, I shouldn't call it this, misery loves company, but this is one of the most recent looks at how associations overall are doing as far as membership is concerned in the COVID era. And this is the Marketing General summary from their last full year of data, which of course is 2021. So they would have had a full year of the COVID to explain this. And if you look in this column over here where it says, can you all see my cursor when I put it up there, Teresa? Okay. So if you look over here in the trade, which is what we're talking about here, and my association as a staff person background's all been with trade organizations. It shows that quite a few organizations have decreased their membership. Now the trade associations are doing better than the professional organizations, the individual member organizations, but the trade associations, a lot of them lost members last year. Some of them increased members. I'll talk about how that happened. About a third of them remain the same. But if you look at that shows, basically between the decrease to remain the same, the vast majority of associations is not growing during COVID. And this is one that always gets me on these. Apparently there's 1%. So there's at least 20 people that filled out this thing that haven't any idea whether their association is growing or not. And I'm just hoping they're not actually in charge of membership. I'm hoping there was somebody that was just taking the survey for some particular reasons. So, and I know that you all have had a lot of discussion about membership in the last year or so through NUCA at different levels. And so I just wanted to remind you of some of the things that came out. Now, this was a chapter president survey. This wasn't the executive director survey from last year. And they asked what the top challenges were. And Teresa or Chris, maybe you can guide me on this. I think you asked them a general question, like what are the biggest challenges facing your chapter in the next year? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you look at what's on here, and you can tell because I put the little asterisks in there, when the chapter president said, what's your top challenge a year ago, almost all of them related to membership, to creating a bigger mass of members for the chapter. There were a couple in here that were very specific about the industry. Their second biggest challenges, again, you get workforce development and some of the other ones that are typical of trade groups right now, including the one I run. But the others, again, even the secondary ones, most of them were related about organizational problems that they were concerned about as chapter presidents. And they were really related to membership there. And shockingly, in their third biggest challenges, we had the same thing. Most of the things they were concerned about related to either membership. There were some down the bottom here that were workforce oriented, a couple that were related to leadership in the chapter, which is an offshoot of that. So I guess what I'm saying is the key thing to being successful is really understanding your priorities. And if you look at those lists that we just went through, there's 18 or 20 different ways that the leaders, the chapter presidents are saying, we need to do this in membership, we need to do this, we need to do this. And we talked with some of the execs the other day, and they said, the problem is, I know some of you are part-time as executive directors, and all of you have got a million things to do. So one of the most important things to do in membership early in the year, if you haven't done it already, is really sit down and think about, of all the things we could be doing to get members, get them engaged, recruit new members, recruit from different categories, of all the things we've got going on, we have to prioritize where we're going to get the most impact on our overall membership growth. And with the limited time we have to spend on membership this year, that's where we need to spend our time. And it's really important because those chapter surveys we just showed you were from the members' perspective, your presidents. We need to make sure we're coordinating with our leadership, our chapter leadership, and they know what's going on in membership. So they don't have expectations of what we're doing versus what kind of response we're getting or what kind of growth we're getting out of the chapter. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do is to help me out. All right. And this is where I need input from you all. Right. Your chapter president just asked you, what are you, or you, the executive director, what are your priorities for where you're going to be spending your time on membership this year? They're asking you, okay, what are we going to do to grow membership and where are you going to spend your time? Now, I understand some of you have got staff. Many of you are one person organizations from a staff perspective. Some of you aren't even a full-time person. So we want you to do it. So I want you to I'm going to give you some things that I pulled off of the other sheets, off of the surveys. And I want you to put these in order for yourself, for your chapter this year, not hypothetical, but for your chapter. You don't have to do them all. I want you to list the top 3. So let me finish this and then we'll give you a chance to take a look at these. All right, what are your priorities? Getting new contractor members, getting new associate members, engaging the members that we have, both as they're coming in and the ones that we've already got, getting your membership committee to be active so that they're actually adding to the efforts to get members, working on our overall retention rate, or one a little bit more specific that was mentioned in the list there, concentrating on first-year members so that we're not churning members over every year, bringing in 3 or 4, losing 4 or 5, bringing in 10 or 12, losing 8 or 9 of those people. All right. So here's what I want you to do, and I'd like you to use the chat on this if you can. I want you to just put the numbers down in priority order for you this year in your chapter. What are your 3 top priorities in membership this year? And priorities isn't, it's where you're going to spend your time now. If you had 5 hours a week, in what order would you apportion that time, right? So let's have you do that, and let's see if we can get some input into the chat. Okay, Rebecca says 1, 2, and 3. Okay. What else? Who else do we have? Janet, member engagement, new associate members, and overall retention. Kelly is going to do active, getting their committee active. Very good. New contractors. Who else? Brenda, active membership committee. Brenda Regal. Kentucky's doing, getting the membership committee active, overall retention. Who we got here? Oh, there we go. Karen DeWitt, member engagement. These are kind of across the board. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so we're kind of running the gambit here. Everybody's got something on it. And I think that's important. I mean, it seems like, you know, obviously it would be different for different chapters depending on what's going on in the chapter and what kind of resources they have and things like that. But the thing is, you have to be able to really concentrate on that. And when you set that up, you need to make sure that your members buy into it and are understanding where you are, because they're going to want you to do all 6 of those. If you just sent that list to your president, he'd probably say, yeah, that's a good plan. Go do it. And you're going to go, no, no, no. You have to help me figure out where I'm going to spend that time, because if I'm spending time on all these things, who's going to be doing the other things that we need to get done to run this chapter and to get people engaged? So believe it or not, they've done some surveys of this also. Okay. And these are barriers to the success of membership strategy. This is a new study that came out from a group called the Association Laboratory this year. And they were asking them about the things that we just talked about. Where are your priorities? What strategy are you going to use this year to get people to join your group to grow your chapter? And I thought this one was really important. As far as what are the barriers to the success of your membership strategy. Number one was creating positive awareness of our association with non-members. So I think what they're saying is that we got some work to do on our branding. And that is a big barrier to going out, because if you have to start introducing everybody, let me tell you what NUCA is, what it's all about, and all those things, what we're doing out there in the marketplace. That, as you'll see in a few minutes, hopefully, that detracts from the time that you should be spending with them talking about their companies and what you can do specifically for them. Creating more in-depth community engagement. You all mentioned that. I think by community there, they mean within the organization and also within our stakeholder organizations, and identifying the most relevant benefits, communicating out there what you're really getting. And as you can see, last year, or up until this year, they said that that's now one of their most important things. Look how much more important that is last year than the year before. And I think some of that, of course, has to do with COVID and the fact that we're not able to see people face to face the way that we were. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to start sharing some ideas among yourselves about what's working out there. But before we do that, we want to talk about some of these things we're facing. So we're going to ask you now to talk amongst yourself. So we're going to put you off into some groups, and we're going to ask you to come back with some input for us. So when you get into your groups, and we're going to do them randomly at first. When you get into your groups, we're going to ask you to just somebody volunteer to be the host, the scribe, the coordinator, whatever, and just take notes on some of the ideas that are coming out. And this is what we want you to talk about in this first breakout session. Okay, we're talking now about getting into that process of understanding the environment in which we're going out and talking to people about joining our chapter. So I want you to do these two questions. What two things, and each of you get a chance to say two things, go around, make sure everybody gets a chance. What two things have changed in the past 3 years that have created challenges to growing your membership? And now, when I say what has happened in the past 3 years, that may be things happening in your members' businesses or in the industry, or it may be things happening within your association, whether it's a staff person left or something like that. Then we want you obviously to do the reverse of that. If you can come up with them, what two things have changed in the past 3 years that have created some opportunities for us to grow our membership in our chapters? And there are some things that have happened in the last couple of years that actually have created some things for us if we look at them as opportunities. So Chris, if you can get them to, this slide is not likely to be up, I don't think, when we put them into their groups, Chris. So everybody just make sure they know what we're talking about here. Two things in the past 3 years that have created challenges to growing your membership, whether they're in the industry or in the organization. And same thing, two opportunities that have come along to grow our chapter. So Chris, if you want to put them in the groups, we'll give you all some time. And then when we come back, we'll want somebody to be the spokesperson for the group and tell us some of the things they came up with in these two categories. Okay, this is great. Typically for me, we're going to run out of time here unless we kind of get things flowing. But I do want to get a input from a couple. Okay, how about group two? Who was the group two record taker coordinator? Does anybody remember what group they were in?
I think I was in group two.
Okay, Kathy, tell us just some of the things that came out.
Well, we had two brand new EDs, so that was kind of, they didn't, they're still trying to figure everything out. So I've been an ED for a long time. So my input for like the first question about growing membership, one of the challenges we've had in our areas, we've had a lot of mergers between associate members in the last couple of years in particular. So that's probably been the biggest challenge in our chapter, because there's nothing you can do about that. At least if it's someone who is going to drop, you have the opportunity to, keep them. But if it's a merger, they're definitely gone. So, and two members becomes one. We had a little bit more information about opportunities for growth. Again, our chapter's in Florida, so we've had a lot of companies moving to the area. So there's a lot of work. So a lot of opportunities for growth with that. One of the other people talked about because of technology, the opportunities to, it's easy to attend some meetings. If you can just do it remotely, you don't have to travel. do it from the comfort of your home or your office. So.
Okay, great. Brenda, you want to give a few that were in group one? You're muted, Brenda.
I didn't realize I was on mute. So we had a whole bunch of things under two things that we felt that changed that were on the bad side. Those where we heard a lot of people saying their time commitment was less. Mergers, again, that was another big one. Retirements was one. Rising costs, workforce changes, material shortages are taking more time for people to deal with that, so they have less time to give to the association, and just additional stress were some of those. The plus things, we felt that networking was still really valuable, regardless if it is live or in person or webinar. But we did again agree with you there that webinars are more acceptable alternative today, and so we all have been really successful using webinars. I had also mentioned about sharing information with other associations. For me and my state in particular had increased. And I think Janet had also mentioned legislative efforts. And she sends talking points ahead of time so that people are prepared to talk to their congressmen or their legislators on topics. Those were some of the things that people found valuable that helped with our growth.
Great. How about one of the other groups? You have anybody else?
I don't know what group I was in, but we talked about the shortage, workers shortage, the shortage of workers, the inability to gather, depending on what state you're in, and the lack of involvement as a challenge. We talked about the opportunities, an incentive flyer that was helpful for one of the chapters and growing their membership. Updates on the COVID policy. They found what the state or national was doing and sending out updates on masks and mandates, et cetera, that was helpful. And connecting via Zoom was also helpful. Having more family involvement and family-friendly events is another opportunity to help to grow and get more participation.
Great. We're gonna get back in. Let me reshare here. Is that back? Is my screen back up again?
No.
Okay, then I'll have to start over again. Excuse me just a second here. Let me get. Okay, back up now?
Yes.
Okay. We were going to do another one. We're not going to do this just from a time perspective, but one of the things that we want to do today is find out what formats are going to work for future webinars and also in San Antonio. So it's obvious that we want to make sure that we spend as much time in these breakouts as we can without making them too long. But here's a couple things that we're talking about in terms of going to the next level. If you understand the environment we're working in, then you have to figure out before we go out and spend that limited time we have trying to get people to join. One of the things we want to do is we need to qualify our prospects before we go out and approach them. You don't want to spend a lot of time getting information from a potential member that you could have gotten before you went in there. You want to talk to them about how you can help their company. So we're not going to do this as a breakout now, but it may be something that is worthwhile to do in San Antonio because we've got some newer people that are there who may not be as experienced as going out and talking to potentials. Try to figure out what do you want to know about a contractor before you approach them about NUCA membership. What kinds of things would help you get beyond the point of just saying, tell me something about your company? Because the more you know ahead of time, the easier it is to get to the bottom line, which is we'd like you to join NUCA and here's why. And we would want to do the same thing about associates. Their lists They may have a lot of similarities, but the lists are going to be slightly different with an associate. So what we want to talk about, which we're not going to do now, but maybe this is a good exercise for us to do in San Antonio or at our next follow-up Zoom meeting, is actually go through and talk about some of the things we'd like to find out about our contractor and associate prospective members, and where would you find that information? How would you get that information? And most importantly, once you've got this profile of that person, how do you use it? And we'll just go through a quick checklist here. All right. This is, all right. You have to find out, what do you need to know about that contractor or associate member that would be important for you to know before you would start talking to them about joining, and then what would be nice to know. And that's an old saying, and need to know and nice to know. Okay. So that when you're talking to somebody, you can use the information that you've done your homework, saying, I noticed on your website, your company is involved in this. Okay. However, don't show off, right? Don't say, I was on your website and I know you want this, 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 and this, because you want to be able to use that information as you're going through the conversation with them. The other thing about doing that homework ahead of time is when you hit a pause in a sale for a member or an associate member, having done that homework can allow you to bridge some of that kind of awkward time when you don't know what the next conversation is going to be in doing those things. And then the most important thing, of course, is use the information that you've done ahead of time to connect with the prospect and connect what they do, what their company does, what their company's advertising on their website to what NUCA is doing. And it says in the little cartoon down there, you can find out what you really have in common and make your messages more meaningful if you've done some of that homework ahead of time, because it looks like you've done some forethought. And then, this is me as a salesperson, use that information in closing, as we know about your company, as we said about this, and doing those kinds of things too. So we can go into some depth in that and help create some of that when we get together in San Antonio. And I'm going to skip through a couple of these other slides in a little bit, but here's something that we need to keep in mind as we go through recruiting, identifying the environment we're working in, knowing that our potential members. If you look back on that survey, I took a couple of things off of there. It says, the President's Survey of biggest challenges, we're getting potential members interested in what NUCA can do for them, NUCA collectively, and explaining what National does. So here's what we have to remember. When we're out talking to people about joining NUCA, never forget to sell the whole package. Obviously, it's like politics, all membership is local. But the fact of the matter is, the package of value, the package of benefits offered by NUCA and the chapter combined is what you want to be talking to them about. And that's why knowing that prospect is so important, because then you'll know which of the things are most important. You may have a contractor who's interested in something or has a specialty area that your chapter maybe doesn't have a lot going on, but NUCA's got a special program for it from National, or something coming up at the national convention for that person. So that's where you can work that part of it into selling a little bit more. I'm going to skip over these last couple of things a little bit because I want to save a few minutes here for some of the questions we got. We also talked about identifying, qualifying, and recruiting members, but then engaging members, both the current ones and the ones we're looking for. So the first thing you want to do is you want to identify what you mean by member engagement. And again, one of the surveys that's out there now, here's the whole list of things on here that people are looking at. And so what you want to do with engagement isn't we sent them a bunch of stuff. Engagement is when members and prospects respond to what we're sending to them, respond to what we're offering them. So this is the way that most people are measuring or what member engagement is. Attendance at things, how many times they've been on our website, are they participating in our social media, have they participated in the mentoring program, are they coming to our annual conference or trade show, are they doing anything as far as political action is concerned, and those kinds of things. This one I thought was interesting because it's the most recent one, and this is what's happened over the last year or so. And what you're seeing, which is not, this is kind of a duh. I mean, the attendance at webinars has grown dramatically during the COVID. And And down at the bottom, which is the negative part of it, and we talked about this in our breakouts, is volunteerism has been way down during COVID. So, but they're measuring all these different things. And so the key thing about measuring engagement is it's not just to help you identify who is doing things, but more importantly, to help you identify who's not participating. And those are the people that you want to target when we talk about member retention and engagement going together. So one of the things you want to do to get people engaged is don't try to get them engaged in something that's not in that ballpark of what you know about their company. So think about the 3 products or services that are the most used and most beneficial, and guide your members that aren't participating toward them, because those are the ones that have proven to provide value. Okay. And you have to identify what those would be in your chapter. These are all some other things, by the way, we can talk about in San Antonio. And then also we tell you, identify as early in the year as you can, who are those people that are the highest risk for dropping out at renewal time. And I don't know whether you're on an annual basis. We're on an annual basis. All of our members renew at the same time. High risk people, first year members are automatically in that group. People that joined because you gave an incentive last year. If you join now, you get 2 free months. I saw that on one of the websites of one of the chapters. If you join now, we'll give you 2 free months. Well, next year, you giving me 2 free months again next year? No. So you have to remember that when you're trying to renew them. Obviously, people that are not engaged during the course of the year, people that joined during a crisis. Did you have a big legislative issue last year? Was there a labor bill? Was there a zoning issue? Was there some kind of a moratorium that went through? And people join when there's a crisis. Those people are among your people most likely to join out next year if there's no crisis. So if you identify those people, that changes how you can communicate with them about becoming members again. And we call them the golden handcuff members, people that joined only because of your insurance program or your workers' comp program, but never participated in anything else. You think they're never going to drop out. Well, wait till your rates go up and you'll find out how interested they were in other things. So those are the kinds of things we want to delve into. Now, I want to prepare us for San Antonio. So here are 6 things to think about between now and our meeting in San Antonio. And I really want this group, and obviously we want to encourage the people that aren't here today to think about these things. We'll talk to them. 6 things to think about between now and the San Antonio meeting so that we can make sure while we're there and we've got everybody together, we can really get the most out of that meeting. Right. Create customized value propositions for each of your prospects. It's hard to do it for individual members, but certainly for categories. And we're going to talk about how do you do that? How do you tell one member this is why you should join, and another contractor right next door, maybe this is why you should join, and how do you customize it to them? And it gets back a little bit to how much work did you do before you contacted them. Member value, this is really critical. Remember that member value isn't how we present member value to them, it's how they perceive it from their perspective. And our focus has got to be on not telling people what we do, but what are the outcomes of what we're doing. And that's something that's really critical when you've got limited time and limited attention spans of our prospects. Okay. As far as member engagement and renewal, what are the first 3 things members consider when they're considering whether NUCA is really providing value? And right now, with the limited time they've got to participate, they're going to sit there once a year when they get the renewal notice and say, is this worth $5,000 for another year? You've got to know what they're measuring there as far as what that value is and what can you do about that. This is an opportunity for us. Engagement is the value. That's the message that we have to get through. Now, we don't necessarily want to use those words. It's not just part of the membership retention process. Engagement is the value, and we know that. But how do we convince our members of that when they can't show up? So we've really got to tell them, this is how you get your money's worth. And this was a question that a lot of them had. What's the best ways to use our members in recruiting? And finally, some of us don't like to do this, but successful member programs, membership development programs, need success metrics. We have to know at the beginning of the year how we're measuring success in membership. Now, last year at the Success Conference, these were all of the topics that came up about what people wanted to learn more about. We can talk about any of those things you want in San Antonio. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like you to, we've got just a couple of minutes left here. I'd like to get any input that any of you have about what you want to cover. We are going to follow up with everybody. We are recording this program so that I'm going to stop sharing here. We are recording the program, so you'll have this information. If you want the slides, I'll be happy to send you the slides also. Just let us know on that. Be glad to do that. You'll have them in here with the commentary, but I can send you the slide deck. There's only 20 slides, so it's not a big amount to show you, but it might refresh your memory on some of the things we've talked about that we need to take notice of if we're going to be successful. And we want to make sure, I don't want to throw all of our value into what are we going to do in San Antonio, because I'm going to be with you during the course of the year also. But we really want to make that someplace maybe we can take and measure the rest of the year by what we discuss there too. Anybody have any comments or things that are that they can think of right now? Yes.
Mark, you did a presentation for us a number of years ago and talked about this, the member value, the outcomes of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you know, Bill was running the association, and I had asked, could you redo some of our membership materials from that perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Like the NUCA national materials, and then we could go ahead and like do that on a chapter level based on what the NUCA national kind of looked like.
You know, we did some of that at National. I do remember doing that at National. They did send me some materials afterwards, but I'll make this offer to you all. If you want to send me some of your chapter stuff, I'll take a look at it and maybe I'll give it back to you in San Antonio.
I think what Kathy's looking for is coming down from national, that it's one message that comes down through and goes out to every chapter the same. That's branding to me, and we don't have that branding. We all have different websites, you know, nothing is uniform. You don't see that on AGC, you don't see that on ABC. They are all the same, no matter what website for what state you go to or what chapter, even within a state, they all look the same and you know exactly where to go to find something. That's what we're missing.
Yeah, in fact, all AGC and ABC and a lot of the others, they've got a branding protocol policy book that they put out to everybody, that you can't use the logo unless you use it this way, and those kinds of things. That's something, to be honest with you, that the leadership of the association's got to pass a resolution on, whether it's the marketing committee or the national board or whoever the leadership is. That's an easy thing, in all honesty, for the staff to implement, but they've got to get real guidelines. My experience is it's not going to be as easy as you think when all of your chapter presidents get together and say, well, no, we've been doing this for 20 years. We're not taking our logo down just because National wants us to do it. The problem is then as we said before, you're wasting some of the resources of National because of the nature of the organization. But don't let that stop you from moving forward and coordinating it in the ways that you can. And that's why I said you've got to sell the package at both ends. You know, National's got to sell the value of chapter membership, and chapters have got to sell the value of national membership, because the members don't have any choice. So there's no sense getting into arguments over, you know, what's going on. And I don't mean this is an argument. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, but I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Well, there are guidelines already, Mark. I have those. I sent those up to NUCA. There are guidelines for our logo. That's already been created, done.
Well, I think Brenda,
sometimes it doesn't apply to some of the chapters that have been in existence prior to those guidelines going into effect. And that's kind of what we're up against. So we hear that, we understand that. I don't think this is the platform to kind of get through that, but yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't care. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I'm just explaining sort of the history that I know.
Yeah, NUCA at one point, to be honest with you, NUCA at one point was a confederation more than it was a parent chapter organization. And things have changed over the years around that. They brought in pre-existing groups as chapters at one point, and vice versa. So it's been that. But no, I think that's good. But again, as I said, I'm serious. I mean, if anybody wants any help with some of their messaging, as far as, you know, at the chapter level, be happy to take a look at those things and you know, just say, Mark, would you take a look at our website and see what our membership section looks like? I'd be happy to make some comments for you and send them back to you.
I think, Mark, part of the problem is contractors, most contractors do not have a marketing department. They don't need to. They bid public work, most of them. All right. So and if they have a little bit of marketing material, they created a small amount because they do some private work. The majority do public work and they don't have marketing. They don't understand that the national needs marketing. They need a person who knows how to do marketing, and really get that message out. Now, I think that Robert has been doing a great job with the topics and all of that, but that's not giving as much down to the chapters. And when I look at the American Subcontractors Association or ABCs or whatever, their national does a lot of educational materials that they pull together and they send it down to every chapter. That's the type of stuff that I think NUCA is going that way with some of the education people that they've recently hired. And it'll be nice to see that come.
Great. Great. Well, I think I'm a couple minutes over my time. I apologize for that, rushing through, but I hope we've gotten enough ideas so that we can continue throughout the year to focus, and maybe, maybe we can take the next webinar can be on one very, very narrow topic, and we'll go into much more depth and something like that. And again, I think San Antonio might point out what that next one would be. So I want to thank you for being with us. And Chris, if you've got any closing remarks. You're muted.
I asked if I'm muted. Typing. I was typing out an email. If I have the slides, I'm happy to send them over. But Mark, if you wanted to send them out, feel free to. You guys have Mark's contact information. And again, let's revisit any questions or anything. Our homework assignment before convention. Let's get that stuff over to Mark so he can prepare for that. We're literally 2.5 weeks out. Technically, for those of us flying and getting there early. So let's, we can, if you could set sort of a timeline and give, some parameters on anything that you'd like back, Mark, that the EDs can respond to prior to convention, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll send a follow-up email.
Okay, great.
Just saying, nice to meet you. Here are the slides. And then if you have something you want to talk about, let me know and give you some options and things like that. That's easy.
Perfect.
We'll get it out right away.
Right. Great. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks again, Mark.
2 weeks.